Good morning. Just a quick video to finish up Jesus' first conversation with the Samaritan woman and wrap up the opposite effect that we see going on between she and Nicodemus. As you probably remember from the last video, Jesus touched on her thirst, on her real need, which was an honest, loving relationship. And as you might imagine, Jesus getting that close to her heart caused her to change the subject. Sir, the woman said, I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. So while Jerusalem was destroyed, remember the nation, a chunk of the nation had been carried off into exile. Jerusalem was destroyed. The remnants, who became the Samaritans, didn't have the temple to worship in. They gathered at a high place, this mountain that was right behind the well where they were talking, and that's where they worshipped. Not something that God really wanted. But what else did they have to do? So this was what the Samaritans were claiming, and they stayed there even after the temple had been restored and then reconditioned by Herod. So this is one of the big beefs between them, is where does worship rightfully take place? Woman, Jesus replied, believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. So, by intermingling with other religions, other peoples during the exile, the Samaritans lost some truth. Jesus is acknowledging. And the Jews that were in exile preserved that truth. Think of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, these guys. You can go back to the book of Daniel to really study into it. And that truth was preserved and now exists, so that Jesus had to be born of the Jews. That's where the biggest repository of truth was. But Jesus coming also changed the whole tenor and the way worship would be done. That change was coming. Yet a time is coming, and has now come, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. So, honestly, whether you were worshiping on the mountain or in the temple, what really made it work is that you were worshiping the Father in spirit and in truth. And that is going to become primary, even over the truths that were being held in the temple and by the Jews. They were about to be expanded, superseded, gone beyond. And this is a good place, if you're teaching this, to unpack, well, what does it mean to worship the Father in spirit and in truth? God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the spirit and in truth. There it is. We need to have the Spirit in our lives, and that only comes through that born again. that Jesus was talking with Nicodemus about, that we're spiritually born. And Jesus was coming to make that possible. The woman said, I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. So where Nicodemus hinted around, nobody could do the things you're doing unless God was with him, she drove right to it. Messiah would be able to make the kind of changes that you're talking about, and took that subject right to Jesus. Are you Messiah, in a sense, is what she's saying here. Then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. Now, again, with Nicodemus, he talked about the Son of Man on the pole, the one and only Son of God, and he couched it in other terms that would cause Nicodemus to think and to try to figure and sort it out for himself. Here, Jesus very clearly states, I'm the Messiah. I'm the Messiah. So again, the opposites. On the one hand, with the highly educated guy who he knows the scripture, he can do all these allusions and images, and the guy isn't going to accept it if he just comes straight out and says it. He's going to have to go back and think about it. He answers one way. With this woman who's ready for truth, who's thirsty for change, whose life is laid open before him, he very clearly states, I am the Messiah. So opposites there. John bringing them in to show us that Jesus was ready and did work with all sorts of folks in the society of that day and met them where they were. Pretty cool.